Welcome to the deep dive. So you've sent us some really compelling stuff about government surveillance of protesters.
Yeah, quite a collection.
Definitely. So for you, we're going to, explore the technologies, the tactics being used, both on the ground, at demonstrations, and also kind of remotely, the digital side.
Right, it's a broad spectrum.
It really is.
Yeah.
And you mentioned wanting to get up to speed quickly, thoroughly, without getting totally overwhelmed. That's exactly what we're aiming for here.
Good plan.
So the mission for this deep dive, get a clear picture of protest surveillance, let's say in 2024, and maybe most importantly, what you can actually do to minimize your own digital footprint.
Okay.
Let's get into it.
All right, let's unpack this.
Okay, so what's really striking when you look at the sources you sent is just the sheer range of tools available now. It's not, just one thing. It's more like a layered approach they use for gathering info.
Layers. Yeah. Let's start with facial recognition. I mean, the idea has been around, obviously, but things really shifted significantly around 2018 with apps like Clearview AI popping up.
Right, because the old way was searching government databases like mugshots, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But Clearview AI, it works totally differently. It's pulling from this huge number of images just all over the internet.
From anywhere online.
Pretty much. You upload a photo, its algorithms check the facial geometry, look for matches in its, massive database of online pictures. It even gives you links back to where it found the image.
And law enforcement is using this?
The claim is over 600 law enforcement agencies are using it. What stands out to you about that technology?
The speed, honestly. Getting an ID in seconds. Even for people who, have no police record, that's astonishing.
It is fast.
And it feels like image recognition tech is just getting cheaper and, easier to get hold of. It kind of makes you wonder how much anonymity you really have in public anymore.
That's a really crucial point. And, the sources mentioned the January 6th insurrection.
Oh, yeah.
Publicly posted videos, stuff on Parler, that became a huge resource for identifying people after the fact. They could just go back and apply the tech.
So it changes the whole idea of being in public if everything's potentially recorded and analyzed later.
Exactly. It blurs the line between just having your picture online somewhere and having it used for identification like this.
And this isn't just a U.S. thing, right? It's happening globally.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Reports suggest public facial recognition systems are used by governments in, 78 countries now?
Wow.
And often, the big issue is there aren't clear rules, no real public accountability. You see examples like Russia using it against war protesters, political opponents.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes it even more complex is that reports mention Western tech, companies like NVIDIA, Intel, supposedly being part of Moscow surveillance setup. It really raises questions about, controlling where this tech ends up.
So what about countermeasures?
Yeah.
Like wearing a mask. Does that actually help?
Well, a mask might offer some shielding, yeah, but it's definitely not foolproof.
Yeah.
Authorities are actively looking for ways around things like masks.
Okay.
And in some places, they've even tried to ban wearing masks at protests specifically. So it's this constant back and forth. Surveillance adapts, and people trying to avoid it adapt too.
So given all that about facial recognition, what's some practical advice? If someone's worried about this at a protest.
Well, the most direct thing, although maybe not always practical, is to just try and minimize your presence in these systems in the first place.
How?
One source, that Wired video, points out a basic step. Just don't take photos and videos yourself at the protest, or at least be mindful.
Wow.
It reduces the chance of capturing your own face, or maybe more importantly, the faces of other people who might not want to be documented digitally.
That's tough, though. Sometimes documenting things feels really important, like part of the act of protesting.
It is, absolutely. Completely avoiding it is hard. The emphasis is more on, reducing your contribution to these data pools.
Yeah.
Think of it as generating less data overall.
Okay, minimizing contribution. Got it. What about just regular CCTV? Security cameras, they're everywhere.
They are absolutely everywhere. You can hardly walk down a city street without seeing them.
So they must capture everything, right?
You'd think so, but data storage, even though it's huge, isn't infinite. And not all that footage is being actively analyzed by, sophisticated AI in real time.
Right.
And interestingly, there have been plenty of big incidents where, despite tons of cameras around, they still couldn't find enough usable footage. So, yeah, it's a wide net, but maybe not always perfectly fine one.
That's actually kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting gears to the digital world then. Social media.
Mm-hmm.
We all know the saying, what goes online stays online. How are authorities actually using social media for protest surveillance?
Well, it's not new exactly. One source mentioned feds using MySpace back in like 2010 for investigations.
MySpace, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. But what's really different now is the sophistication of the tools. Things like Data Miner let law enforcement sift through massive amounts of social media data way more efficiently.
A fine way.
They can see how protests are being organized, identify maybe key activists, map out connections between people. It's quite powerful.
So it's moved beyond just looking at one person's profile page.
Oh, yeah. Way beyond. It can be targeted, sure, looking at a specific person's posts, their photos, but it can also be super broad, searching for anyone talking about a specific topic or a specific location.
And pulling data from different platforms.
Exactly. Aggregating it all. Someone used the term vibe check, which is actually pretty good. It lets them get a sense of the overall mood, the trends, even if it's not obvious on your own curated feed.
And this isn't just the FBI, right?
Yeah.
Local police are doing this too.
Precisely. These tools are becoming more common for local departments, and often people just aren't aware it's happening. And, those privacy settings on Facebook or wherever, they offer some control, sure, but it's probably wise not to think of them as like an impenetrable shield, especially on the big platforms.
The example you mentioned, the Minneapolis Police Department during the George Floyd protests in 2020, that really highlights it.
It really does. The fact they were collecting data on dates, locations, organizers, even crowd sizes, and then sharing that info with other agencies. Secret Service, Department of Defense. It just shows how interconnected these surveillance efforts can be.
So it comes back to being careful online.
Yeah, back to data minimization. Even though there's that tension, with potentially chilling free speech, being cautious about what you post and when you post it is pretty crucial. Like that advice about not posting vacation pics while you're still gone.
Right.
Same principle, really. Don't advertise your location or activities unnecessarily if you have concerns.
Okay, let's talk about something that sounds, well, kind of like spy movie stuff.
Yeah.
MC catchers, stingrays, the things that pretend to be cell towers.
Exactly this. Yeah, they were originally developed for military, national security uses, but they basically impersonate a real cell tower and trick nearby phones into connecting to them instead.
They're used by local police. Secretly.
Yeah, the secrecy is interesting. The FBI reportedly even made state and local police sign non-disclosure agreements just to be able to use them.
So what happens when your phone connects to one? What data do they get?
The main goal is just identifying which phones are in a specific area at a specific time. They grab the phone's IMSI number, that's the International Mobile Subscriber Identity.
Your phone's unique ID.
Right. They can do it passively, just sort of scanning for signals, or actively, where they act like a fake tower and force phones to connect and give up that ID.
Can they listen in?
Potentially, yeah. In some cases, they might be able to intercept unencrypted stuff, like regular SMS text messages. But the key thing for a protester is just the presence. If you bring your phone, its presence in that location could be logged by one of these devices.
How common are they? Are they everywhere?
Reports say they're used in 23 states in D.C., plus lots of federal agencies, DEA, IC, FBI, NSA, DHS.
Okay, so quite a few places.
Yeah, but maybe put it in perspective for the average protester. While they can scoop up data from lots of people when targeting just one, they're also apparently pretty expensive and technically complicated to actually use.
So maybe not the number one worry for everyone at every protest.
Possibly not the most immediate or widespread threat compared to some other things. It's a serious capability, but maybe not deployed constantly everywhere.
Yeah.
But sticking with phones, let's talk about location data held by your actual cell carrier.
Right. I mean, your provider knows where you are. That's just how phones work.
Pretty much a given, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where things like geofence warrants or reverse location warrants come in.
What are those?
They're legal tools that let law enforcement ask tech companies or apps for location data on all devices that were in a specific area during a specific time window.
All devices, not just the suspects.
Exactly. All of them within that defined zone and time. And that data can then be used to ID users, maybe link them to other stuff like social media accounts.
Wow. Okay, that sounds like casting a really wide net.
It is. It's a form of bulk data collection, often pretty indiscriminate. It means bystanders, people not even involved in whatever they're investigating can get swept up.
So that's another argument for maybe leaving your phone at home.
It is. Or using something like a Faraday bag, which blocks the signals. Now, let's shift to something a bit less direct, but still really significant. data brokers.
Data brokers, I've heard the term, but what exactly do they do?
Okay, so their whole business is collecting personal data from tons of different places. Public records, websites you browse, apps you use.
All sorts of sources.
All sorts. And they bundle all this data together to build really detailed profiles on people. They categorize us, for advertisers mostly like high income, new moms, whatever.
But police use them too.
Yes, that's the key point here. While advertisers are the main clients, law enforcement agencies can and do buy this data to help with investigations.
Who are these companies?
Big names you might recognize, like Experian, Axiom, Equifax. You probably remember the huge Equifax data breach back in 2017.
Oh, yeah, that was massive.
Right. It just shows the sheer volume of data these companies hold. And police can use it to identify persons of interest or just find anyone matching certain criteria, maybe anyone whose phone IP address pinged in a certain area, or someone who searched for specific keywords online.
How do they even get all that info? It feels kind of invisible.
A lot of it is invisible. It happens behind the scenes. They track your web browsing with cookies. They analyze your social media activity, data from those, silly online quizzes you take.
Oh, those things.
Yeah, potentially. The data they collect is incredibly broad. Name, address, phone, email, demographics, sometimes even social security number, education, income, property owned, what you buy, public records.
That's everything.
Pretty much. And while sometimes you technically consent to data sharing in those super long terms of service nobody reads,
Guilty.
it's often buried. Plus, even if data is supposedly anonymized, it can often be de-anonymized pretty easily, especially if location data is involved. They even build network profiles showing who's connected to whom.
It sounds almost impossible not to be in these databases.
Honestly, in today's world, especially in the U.S., where the regulations are still kind of patchy,
Yeah,
it's very hard to avoid. Now, in the direct context of a protest, maybe it's not the most acute, immediate risk compared to, say, facial recognition on the spot.
right.
But it's a huge underlying privacy issue just because of the sheer amount of data and how it could be used down the line.
Okay. What about something more visible, like license plate readers, ALPRs? I see those camera things mounted everywhere now.
Yep, ALPRs. They capture your license plate number plus the exact location and time. And while it's technically the car being tracked...
Well, the car's usually linked to a person.
Exactly. It often acts as a proxy for an individual. You see different types. Stationary ones bolted to poles, mobile ones on police cars, even trailer-based ones they can leave somewhere for a while.
Trailers.
Yeah, there were reports about the DEA even disguising some as those speed limit warning signs. And it's not just police collecting this. Private companies like Vigilant Solutions collect ALPR data too, and then sell access to law enforcement.
And I think I read somewhere they can capture more than just the plate number.
That's right. Concerns have been raised that these systems might also capture other visible text or images nearby. So, theoretically, words on a t-shirt, a sign in your car window.
Okay, that's broader than I thought.
Yeah. The general worry with all this data, ALPR included, is just that once it's collected and stored, who knows how it might be used in the future or who might get access to it. It creates this potential record.
Right. And then, kind of related to cameras in the sky, drones. It definitely feels like we see more drones at protests now.
Absolutely. Even relatively small, off-the-shelf drones can carry pretty sophisticated cameras and other sensors.
So police are using them routinely.
Law enforcement agencies are definitely using a whole range of drones. Some have thermal imaging for night, others are built for longer surveillance times. During the George Floyd protests in Minneapolis, there were reports of significant drone use.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, including one report about a Customs and Border Protection drone flying super high, like 20,000 feet, basically invisible from the ground.
20,000 feet. What could it do from up there?
Well, according to reports, it had advanced cameras, radar, and maybe even the ability to geolocate cell phones.
Wow. That's a huge leap from, like, the old police helicopter flying overhead.
Exactly. The risk isn't just the drone itself, it's the combo of their improving technology, the fact they're getting cheaper, and just how easy they are to deploy compared to a helicopter. It's a definite evolution in aerial surveillance.
Okay, so that covers a lot of current tech.
Yeah.
What about stuff that's, well, even newer? Emerging technologies.
Yeah, this is where it gets maybe a bit more futuristic, but it's stuff that's being developed or trialed.
Like what?
One area is gait recognition.
Gait, like how you walk.
Exactly. Using AI and sensors cameras, motion detectors, radar to identify people based on their unique walking pattern.
Seriously.
Yeah. The idea is it could work even if someone's face is covered. Though, obviously, Things like an injury or uneven ground could affect it.
Is that being used here?
Not widely by U.S. law enforcement as far as we know, but there are reports of it being used in places like Shanghai and Beijing in China.
Okay. What else?
Another one is emotional detection technology.
Detecting emotions. How?
Using AI, again, analyzing biometric data, facial expressions, maybe voice tone, other signals to try and infer someone's emotional state and maybe even predict their behavior.
That sounds incredibly problematic and probably not very accurate.
Exactly. There are huge concerns about reliability, bias, taking things out of context. Just because someone has what you might call an angry walk doesn't mean they're actually angry or about to do something problematic.
Right. My I'm late for a meeting walk looks pretty angry sometimes.
Precisely. But there have been trials, like using Amazon Tech in UK train stations to test detecting age, gender, and emotions, and reports of it being used on Uyghurs in China.
That's deeply concerning.
It is. The bigger trend here is developing systems that look beyond just faces, analyzing other biometrics, and that obviously opens up a whole new set of privacy worries.
Definitely. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Facial recognition, social media tracking, stingrays, location data, data brokers, ALPRs, drones, even gait and emotion tech. Bringing it all back to the practical level, what are the key takeaways? What can someone actually do to protect themselves better at a protest?
Right. Let's summarize the advice. The single most effective thing, even if it seems drastic, is probably leaving your phone at home altogether.
Just don't bring it.
If that's feasible for you, yeah. If you feel you need it, then using a Faraday bag is the next best bet to block signals when you don't need to communicate.
Okay. What else for the phone?
Definitely turn off biometric unlocking, Face ID, fingerprint sensor. Use a strong passcode instead. Police might be able to compel you to unlock with biometrics, but generally not a passcode.
Good tip. What about online?
Assume anything you post online could potentially be seen by law enforcement. Check your sharing settings, obviously, but don't rely on them completely. And think twice before posting pictures or videos of the protest, especially ones that clearly show other people's faces.
Right. Minimize contributing data about others, too.
Exactly. For communication, use end-to-end encrypted messaging apps. Signal is often recommended.
Okay. And physically?
Wearing a mask. As we discussed, it's not foolproof against facial recognition, but it does offer some degree of obscuration.
Makes sense.
And finally, it's really important to assess your own personal risk level. Your situation might be different based on things like your immigration status, or if you belong to a group that's often targeted for surveillance. Know your risks.
That's a really crucial point. Context matters. Are there places people can find more info?
Yeah, for more detailed guides and resources, websites like Wire.com often have good, up-to-date information on digital security and privacy.
Great. Okay, so wrapping this up. It's clear that protest surveillance is, multifaceted. It's complex. It's constantly evolving.
Definitely.
It spans everything from, your physical presence right there on the street to all your digital activities online and the data trails you leave.
It covers a lot of ground.
Yeah. So hopefully this deep dive has hit the mark for you, our listener, giving you those key insights, a clearer picture of what's going on, like you asked for.
Hope it helped cut through the noise a bit.
Me too. And while, honestly, hearing all this might feel a bit overwhelming.
It can be a lot, yeah.
There are concrete, actionable steps we talked about that you can take. Minimizing the data you generate, enhancing your personal security. It's not hopeless.
Absolutely. There are things you can do.
So the final thought I want to leave you with, something to chew on maybe, is this. With all these surveillance capabilities becoming so widespread and powerful, what does that actually mean for our fundamental rights? The freedom to assemble, freedom of expression, especially now that so much happens in this digital age.
That's the big question, isn't it?
It really is. Something important to consider.